Hello everyone, welcome to part 2 of my honest opinions on Legends of Runeterra. I have good news and bad news. The bad news we'll get to in a second. The good news is that I'm actually enjoying the game, at least in part. I've discovered its limited mode, Expeditions, which is the equivalent of Gauntlet and Duelist or Arena in Hearthstone. It's a draft mode. It takes some influences from Dungeon Run in Hearthstone, where instead of getting individual cards, you get packages of them, and your deck improves as you go along. But fundamentally, it's a draft mode. Before I get into that, the bad news. Riot, this game has now solidly, I believe, crossed what I call the Shadowverse line, which is where I'm embarrassed if someone walks in on me playing it with their new event. They've got a limited time event celebrating their their made up K-pop idol group, KDA. This is quite a cool idea on paper. So Riot has some kind of, for those unaware, Riot has some kind of music department, and they have fake bands made up of characters from League of Legends, or at least this one is. They have a fake metal band called Pentakill, I believe. Not very familiar with them. And they also have a fake idol group called KDA. Who, yes, is made up of a group of female characters from the game in, I don't know, little alternate costumes or something. And they have, I don't know if they have different personalities from, and it doesn't matter. They don't do a lot of murdering, they make pop music. For about a month, they've got a special event themed around those characters with like special unlocks and new cards and that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, and maybe you can see where this is going if you watched the last video and my opinions on the female character art in this game. Well, this is what they look like. That is. So, where do I even start with this? I mean, I think I'm going to start by turning off my no swearing rule on the stream for a moment to say, what the fuck is this, Riot? Like, look, this is 5 interchangeable skinny white women in skimpy clothing. I literally can't tell them apart. None of them are actually in the game, I found out. I thought one of them was Ash, who is a character in this game, who wears like a blue and white dress. That one in the front is apparently someone else. How the hell do I know? They're literally all identical. This sort of fan service cheese art is, you know, it's not unique in gaming. It's nothing new in gaming. It is an endemic problem with the female character design that we most often end up interacting with in games. It is, you know, there is a slow. There are changes slowly being made in various places. You know, Apex Legends, for instance, is a very diverse and well put together roster. And Riot seemed to be stuck in the Duke Nukem days. This is made doubly bad by the fact that there's also, I mentioned these are all white women. Like, there are very few non-white characters in this game as well, which, like, this is supposed to be a K-pop group, i.e. drawing from this massive Korean and Japanese cultural phenomenon, and as far as I can tell, they're all white. It's just like there's no reference to the culture they come from at all, at least from what I've seen in the game. And if you look at, I was just looking through the character roster in the collection, and there's like a couple of characters who are coded black. I couldn't spot anyone who definitively looked Asian, either like West Asian in India or East Asian. Like even the martial art themed characters, like Lee Sin, looks like a white guy. He looks like a YouTuber who makes like heavy metal covers or something. Like, where is he? Oh, hitting enter, that helps. Look at this dude. Like, there's one character who looks a little bit Asian, and that is, I think, mostly because the artist took... Why did I never get away from the collection? the artist took reference from Bruce Lee. Like, that is, you know, that I would be very surprised if that wasn't drawn off of a photo of Bruce Lee. And he looks like the tiniest bit. Like he could be from East Asia. The tiniest bit. That's as close as we get. So going back to this, right? This whole thing. Let's do... We've got a Kinder Everyday crossover episode coming up here. Why is this actually bad? Right? Because why is it such a problem? Why do I have a problem with this? Why am I complaining about this instead of showing you gameplay? I can make two arguments for this. One of them is the moral argument, and the other is the social argument, I guess, and the other is the pure storytelling argument. We'll start with that one first, because I think it leads into the former. One of the biggest avenues that you have, especially in card games, of communicating character to people is those characters' appearance, right? People in real life dress to express themselves. People in card games and video games and what have you with absolutely zero physical constraints on the practicality of their attire or what exists in the real world can dress in a variety of, you know, bizarre and unpredictable ways, right? You can have people in armor, people in clothes, people in big wizard robes, people in spandex, whatever. You can have someone levitating with their magic powers. That person's clearly a wizard, right? Maybe let's start there. If you look at Iron Man, right? The character Iron Man, he's often depicted flying with his little thrusters, and obviously he's covered head to toe in this big robot suit with like the sophisticated segmented armor and glowing eyes. It's very obvious that what that character is, right? Like, he's a dude in a robot suit who can fly, and is very high tech, and you can just tell that by looking at him. I can't discern anything from the design of the majority of these characters because they're all identical. There's nothing in them... Like, I can't really be expected to assume that they're all from the same culture in the game. There are, like, 9 regions in this game already. Presumably there's something that differentiates them, but, like, you can't tell from the art. They're all the same ethnicity, the same build. They don't have any really obvious identifying characteristics. Like, looking at the art of the cards in general, there are some people who wear furs, and I'm guessing that some percentage of those are like the Viking-themed faction. The others couldn't tell you anything. Like, some of them have slightly different coloured armour, but it's really not obvious what correlates to what. And in general, I found it very difficult to learn which cards actually belong to which factions in this game. So the more homogenous your design is, and the more rigid your aesthetic guidelines, the harder it becomes for you to not only tell stories with your character design, because a lot of the time people are going to look at art and go, oh yeah, this is what this represents. It's going to give them a mental image of not only the character as it exists on the page, but the character in motion in their head. What they do, what they speak like, how their personality is. Like, I chose, if you look at the top left, I chose this, oh, it's gone. I chose this card as my icon. What's she called? Something, Astute Academic. I really like this art, partly because it's like one of 2 women of color that I've seen in the entire game, maybe three. But also because, like, it's really characterful. I hadn't even looked at the full thing before. Like, this person is, you know, it doesn't even go outside their guidelines, but her thin waist is hidden by a table, so it's not quite as bad. But like, this person is, you know, is very studious. They've clearly, like, look at all the stuff they're interacting with and doing. There's kind of this openness in her expression. And in general, it's like a very... It tells a lot closer story of this character and who they are, and makes them look more distinguished, right? This character stands out because they have a different skin tone from the entire rest of the game. And so that, to me, added some appeal, both from a representation perspective and from, like, just enjoying it. Like, I like this art, I like this character. This person is probably quite fun to have a conversation with. They're clearly smart. You know, that sort of thing, people infer this stuff from art. But, like, these identical women, like, Jinx is a bit characterful, but, like, Or at least is purple, I guess. Therefore, she's evil. I mean, like, you know, the more variety you have in your characters, the more you can convey about them in pictures. And that ties into the resonance of the mechanics of that card. So the more like generic people you have, you know, like this guy, I have absolutely, he's a soldier, but like so is everyone in this game. It's a game about things fighting, right? I know literally nothing about this character. This guy, he's clad in red, he's all spiky, he's got these big talons, he's called Vladimir, so he's clearly at least themed around vampires. I've got a lot more to go on, right? Like, he's maybe got that big aristocratic head thing. And like, you can also include this variety between characters by changing their skin tone, changing their ethnicity, their build, you know, what they're doing. Like, by presenting all of the female characters in this game as these identical, like, internal organless, wispy white women, they become the same. Like, there's, you know, outside of this one's holding a bow, there's not much to say about them. It also really bothers me that, like, none of them have any muscles. These are soldiers and warriors, demons. Like, look at Leona's arms. Look at her weight. Like, this woman is some kind of military commander, right? Based on the scene around her. But she has no muscles at all. My fiance is slim and athletic. She works out a lot, and has a slim build, right? So, people whose job is punching stuff would be way more muscular than, like, if people do that. And like, there's none of these women are all like interchangeable waifs, and so they're not believable characters. No, that makes them less interesting to me, and less real, less realized. So with that said, onto the kind of social argument. Games like Runeterra, right? This try to construct a world. They try to construct societies and people. It's not just a game with... It's not like a pack of playing cards where you have pictures on the royals, right? Those... In-game, I can go into the collection manager and I can look at whoever, Elise, and I can see her full art, and like, oh, look, there's someone scared holding some roses. Fair enough. And she's got some flavor text. Like, this is what the hell is that? Crotch. This is an actual person, right? There's a person being created. So I, as a player, am not only expected to engage with the game mechanically, but also engage with the characters being presented in that game. And that's normal. That increases... Generally, that makes games more fun, right? When there's a story to tell, when there's characters to latch onto, and crucially, when there's characters to relate to. In Overwatch, I love playing Lucio, despite the fact that, like, I very rarely have any actual impact on him. I get much more done if I'm playing most of the other supports. But I love Lucio because I relate to him very strongly. He's an enthusiastic musician. I love music. I love playing music. It is a big part of me and who I am. And I love Lucio's optimism and friendliness. So that makes me relate to him as a character. When I sit down to play Overwatch, there's actually a wide variety of characters that I can find aspects of either myself or things I aspire to in. In general, Overwatch, I'm not holding up Overwatch as like the gold bar in representation, but just because it's a convenient comparison with the, you know. I like Reinhardt's bravery and sense of like fun. Obviously, Reinhardt's silly; he's a bit of a joke, but he's also a very lovable character. And I find that embodying his like, yeah, I'm a frontliner kind of spirit actually helps me play him. And I enjoy taking on that personality. I love Winston's affableness and May's sort of softness, and, you know, Anna's wry, caring wit, and more. Right? These characters are very humanized. They're very relatable. Most of them. Like, let's not think about Widowmaker. For that to work, I need to be able to see those characters as a positive image for myself. We cannot escape the reality that we live in a world where women's bodies and women's appearance are considered hugely important. And not only considered, they can affect your job prospects, it can affect your social standing, it affects how people view you, right? Humans are naturally predisposed to, be more amenable to attractive people. And it is also the case that, like, our perception of what's valued in society and what's attractive is shaped by media. If you see the same bodies presented as aspirational day in, day out, it's going to affect not only what people find attractive, but also how people see themselves. If you log into this game as a person with a feminine body, who's, a feminine body where society has made such a big deal out of it, and you look at these characters that you're supposed to relate to, that you're supposed to connect to, and that are supposed to be real and believable, right? These characters are supposed to represent the swathe of people that exist in this universe. And if you're a person of color, or if you're, like, not literally, like, thinner than my arm, and you look at these characters, they're not you, right? They're not us. These characters are not people that the vast majority of us could relate to or attach to. So not only is their storytelling made all the thinner by their shallow design, our ability to relate to them as people who look like us, or people who could be like us, personality-wise, is greatly diminished. And furthermore, the game tells players, women, people of color, like, basically anyone who's not white and either a dude or incredibly, like, unhealthily thin, people like you don't exist in this world. You're not wanted here. And it sounds dramatic, but that is genuinely the impression that is given by this sort of art style. Because, like, art doesn't exist in a vacuum. If you have a game where there's a broad variety of people, and then you drop in one champion that's super thin and wafy, that's fine, right? That can tell a story about that character. That can be an aesthetic for that character. It doesn't have to be realistic, right? Like, none of these characters are necessarily realistically drawn, nor would I expect them to be. I mentioned Reinhardt a moment ago. Reinhardt is, like, 8 feet tall, and, like, clearly his shoulders are about, like, 2 feet away from his head based on the shape of his armor. He's not a realistic character, but he's also not drawn in this kind of objectifying way. And he's very personable. His personality comes to the front. His size is part of him as a character, right? He is a big personality who wants to be at the front line, who wants to tower over the battlefield, who wants to, give everyone big bear hugs. That ties into who he is as a person, right? As an imagined person, as a drawn character. But art is made by human beings. Like, these women, they don't give that impression of, like, oh yeah, I'm thin because what? These people are drawn like this because this is how the artists see women, right? This is how the art direction of the game wants to go. You don't stumble upon an aesthetic like this by accident. Like, unless Runeterra is trying to tell some really subtle narrative about anorexia, or something, which, like, that's clearly not the case either, because these women all look healthy, and eating disorders are incredibly hard to deal with, and often have very negative effects on people's bodies and self-esteem. Like, often, of course, they like, that's literally what they are, but, like, it's, this whole aesthetic is a choice, an artistic choice. And what it communicates is that the artists don't care, right? They don't care whether people relate to these characters. They just want to look at nipped waists all day. And that not only detracts from the characters from a storytelling perspective, but it is directly an insult and a push away to people who come and look at these characters and might be affected in that way. Not everyone's going to care, right? Women play this game. I was watching a Misogyny stream it the other day. I don't know if she cares. I haven't I don't follow her that actively. Maybe she's talked about this before, right? It's people are allowed to have their own opinions on this, and be affected by it in the way that they are or aren't affected by it. But overall, this sort of art direction, this sort of aesthetic, pushes people away. It has a negative effect, and it contributes to the striation by gender and by ethnicity that exists in the gaming community, right? If you look at any amount of stats, women play games, loads and loads of games. But if you show this to people on Reddit, they'll be like, oh no, well, Candy Crush doesn't count, obviously. And yes, it does, for a start. But, well, why aren't they playing these strategy games? Is it because the community is almost entirely dudes who don't see a problem with playing games with, these stick-thin caricatures that are supposed to be women? Is it because gaming communities are, dominated by men who don't see a problem with the way women are depicted, white people who don't see a problem with the way ethnicities are often depicted in games, or not depicted, as the case may be. That's people are often made to feel unwelcome in communities to which they are an outsider. And if everyone else has a different skin color from you, you're gonna feel like a fucking outsider. And if you're a person with, who's wears a clothes size of more than -4, it's pretty reasonable to feel like you might not be welcome in this community. And there are going to be people who, if you mention this, they're going to push back. There's probably going to be someone in the comments being like, oh no, you're all wrong, this is fine. You don't want to have to argue for your own right to have internal organs or body fat like humans do, or to exist as an equal in a space where not only is the community historically dominated by white men thanks to marketing, but the art direction of the games themselves reinforces this bias by, some ham-fisted attempt to appeal to that primary demographic. This stuff has to come from the top down. And as I mentioned last time, Riot is not exactly... They are currently, I'm told, working on their internal culture issues, but Riot is certainly not a company I would expect to be at the forefront of this change, because they have had, if you didn't see the last video, they've had a lot of problems with a toxic and misogynistic internal culture and mistreatment of particularly female employees over the last couple of years that have come to light. And even then, that's not an excuse, right? But it's kind of a bit telling that that's the culture that produced, at least formed the team that made this game, even if the team itself isn't comprised of the same toxic people. I haven't seen any evidence either way. And the source material that they're drawing on, League of Legends, apparently it's even worse than this, and these characters have apparently been toned down in their depiction from how they are in LoL, which I assume means they have smaller chests. That's probably what it is, isn't it? Let's be honest. So yeah, I was more than a bit displeased to come in. Thank you, open-handed tea. To open the game on patch day about a week ago, and be presented with... Keep clicking on the wrong frickin' tab. Be presented with this, because this is just so emblematic of my biggest problem with this game, and the reason I'm enjoying Runeterra, and I probably have 30 hours so far. It has a phone version, so I've been playing it in evenings while getting ready for bed, and then occasionally playing it on desktop. And it's I still feel guilty about playing it. This is really this is a problem for me. I dislike how much of a backstep this is compared to the progress that is being made across the industry. Like compared to Magic, which has its own big problems, right? There was not long ago there was a big expose about racist hiring practices at Wizards of the Coast, and their handling of gender-related issues. They try, but they have certainly not been overly consistent. But that said, the art direction of the game itself has been making leaps and bounds, and the depiction of female characters and people of color in the game is both more frequent and more appealing. Like, and there are characters with different body types. We finally started to get like characters who are a bit larger in Magic, and that's fantastic, right? That variety and that naturality, that's not a word, but like, you know, it's when you're making a game that's supposed to cover a real place or places and a realistic setting. Yeah, there's magic and stuff, but like there's people in it, right? Even if they're green aliens, they're still people fundamentally. They're written by humans and they're meant to be understood and related to by humans. And therefore, it's only right to give them the same variety that humans have, because it's believable, it's real, and it's fun, and it's just good to accommodate more players who might now be able to look at this game and be like, hey, that's me. I might want to play this. And that's a real thing that happens. I see this all the time. People look at a card that depicts a person of color, you know, and they're like, oh, hey, that's me. I didn't realize I was in this game. I didn't realize this was a game that I can play. Which, like, there's no law stopping them from playing it, in theory, but in practice, there absolutely really is, right? If the game depicts a bunch of people that aren't you, you're not going to have anywhere near as much interest in it. You're not going to feel like a part of that demographic, a part of that community. You're not going to feel invited in the same way. Plus, as I mentioned, like, this menu screen is like the cringiest thing in the world. I don't want someone to walk in on me with this up. It just looks so, it's so tacky. So yeah, that's the bad news. Let's do some gameplay. I feel a little bad even showing like anything that could conceivably promote this game, to be honest. But in the interests of science, let's have a look. Because, you know, to be fair, this could change, right? You can change art, you can redo art, and then the game itself can stand. Or another developer might look at this and go, I can take some lessons from this game, because there are some lessons to be learned from this game. There are interesting ideas in this game, and apply them elsewhere. So I think while the art direction is horrible, the game design still has value, and to be fair, presumably was done by different people. Hopefully they weren't misogynists. Fingers crossed, they probably were. No ethical consumption under capitalism. Let's go. So I've been playing a lot of expeditions. I still don't have any cards, by the way. Like, I've played... So my previous video came out 2 weeks ago, and I've been playing solidly since then, and my collection hasn't really gotten meaningfully larger. I've got a playset of a couple of champions now, but I can't really, like... They're not... As far as I'm aware, they're not top tier champions or anything. Like, I could build a deck around them, and I probably will at some point. But I haven't really felt the need to, because I've been enjoying doing this instead. Which, you know, that's fine, right? Don't need a collection if you just draft all day. So, the way expeditions work is you can enter them with shards, which is the crafting currency. Or you can enter them with expedition tokens, which you get one of a week in your vault. And I got a couple more when I started as rewards. Or you can enter them with money. Right now, shards wise, I have about 14,000 shards, which sounds like a lot, but a champion is 3k. So if I wanted to craft a deck, I could craft 4 champions and then some other cards. So I still need to open at least one more champion for the deck I actually want to build, which is Dirtly Dragon Control. Or I can, you know, like I said, I can put something together around Ash and Brown, but I don't really want to use up, which are the champions I have 3 of, but I don't really want to use up my crafting resources in the meantime. because I might need them for net decking. So, considering the game is, like I said, supposed to be super generous, I think I've gained, I want to say about 7 or 8 champion cards. Maybe slightly more than that. I've got a couple of champion wild cards as well, so I probably could craft a deck now, depending on how much other stuff I needed for it. Yeah, actually, okay. I'm going to revise my statement slightly. I could craft a deck. It would use everything I have, more or less. But I could craft a deck now. That would be like a net deck. Or some equivalent. And would serve me well on ladder. And it would burn up all my resources, but then I now know that I can... Well... Yeah, I could probably grind the same thing again in another 3 weeks, which is like an okay amount, I guess. But, back to expeditions. So... This is my current deck. I'm playing Freljord, which are like the ice faction. In practice, they're the faction with ramp. Not that I got any, but they have ramp. And Targon, which are the faction with dragons. Or the most dragons. And this idiot. So, I love this card. This is the funnest card to have on my side of the table. This card is functionally unbeatable in draft, by the way. You just have to have a massive board and hope you can race it. Anyway, the way I found the draft works is quite similar to Magic the Gathering in practice, because this game has like no removal, right? I covered this last week. It has a lot of combat tricks, and they tend to be very important because of the lack of efficient removal. This also means that any creature that can fight repeatedly or has evasion is extremely powerful. Cards that can either attack into any board or can choose what they want to, what blocks them. So cards with Challenger and Elusive are very strong. I've also found that Regeneration, which makes a creature heal at the end of every turn, is extremely strong because those creatures can attack every turn, and so they're going to rack up damage. The best situation to be in this game is you have a combat trick in your hand and you make a profitable attack. And your opponent might be forced to either, take damage, make bad blocks, or use a combat trick of their own. Sometimes they'll make a misplay and just chump block. Sometimes they have to chump block. Or they block and they use a trick to try and win combat, and you get them with your own. The other option is, you catch them tapped out and you have tricks. Or they just don't have anything in hand, and you get the read and you're like, whatever, I'm gonna punish you now. My previous deck had 4 copies of Troll Chant, which is 2 mana. An enemy creature gets -2/-0. A creature of yours gets +0/+2. In Magic, this card would be fine. You might play one if you didn't have anything better to do. Or if it was particularly good in the matchup, like you might sideboard it in. In this game, this card is so good that I was looking at a deck guide for a net deck, and the player was like, yeah, we run this. It's like the best card in this faction. This is one of the best things about this faction. We run 3 copies in like top tier constructed. That baffled me. That is how key combat tricks are in Runeterra. This lines up very well with my experiences in Magic the Gathering, and as a result, I have a ridiculous win rate, despite only picking up the game quite recently. I find drafting quite comfortable. Aiding that is the relatively forgiving structure. So, at each stage, you can absorb a loss. If you lose 2 in a row, you're out. But if you lose 1 and then win the next one, you can lose again. This helps offset, sometimes you have a bad draw or a bad matchup. They have Aurelian Soul and you don't. That sort of thing. And you just, you die. It can happen even if your deck is really good. And it's a nice way of, allowing you to keep going and reach a higher... Your deck keeps getting better as you go because you can swap out cards after each round or get new packages of cards, including additional champions. So even if your deck is wonky early on, you can kind of fix it later, which really helps offset the draft structure itself. The draft is similar. You get 15 choices of packages of cards, of 2 cards at a time, or a champion and 2 other cards. I think is the first 2 picks. Right now, I've reached this stage of 3 wins, so I have 4 champions, but you start off with 2. And then the final if you lose the final, you're actually out. You also get 2 shots at it, so each expedition token gets you 2 entries, and the best record of either is picked. The trade-off for this is that the rewards are quite bad. If you have to get to 7 wins to make your entry fee back in terms of shards, and if you do that, you'll get a few cards on top and like an epic capsule, which you'll get an epic card, which is like, it's fine. The reason I've been playing this is well, it's fun, but it allows me to explore the game without having to own any cards, and of course you can still do quests and whatnot normally. The other reason I've been playing it is, like I said, I've been winning a lot. So far, I've only failed to make 7 wins once, and I had a couple of runs where I had a deck that died at like 3 or 4 wins, and then I made it to 7 with the other one. But in general, I'm sitting on about a 75% win rate, based off of the fact that actually I think this game has very complicated mechanics, but I think it's actually quite simple in strategy, at least in terms of the core mechanics of the game. Like in Constructed, it's probably different because the decks get more and more specific, but basically the game plan in Draft is to stick a card that your opponent can't deal with, and ride it to victory. So normally that's a champion. The champions are all better than everything else at their mana cost, and they have ridiculous long game win con options as well. This card is very hard to level up in Draft. You have to damage the enemy Nexus, which is their face, in 5 different turns. But her play effect is insane. So, or absurd, I should say. So, it gives an enemy Frostbite, which makes it 0 power and vulnerable, which means you can choose how it blocks. And she herself is a 5/6. So if you play that on a turn, she can attack. You make something 0 power. Sejuani hits. You make them block her. She eats whatever it was. And, you know, if they have a pump spell, whatever, the creature's 0 power. So they have to pump it a lot to get Sejuani to actually die. This card is, like I said, functionally unbeatable. I think Aurelion Sol and Lee Sin are the 2 strongest cards in the Draft format. Lee Sin, I think I talked about him a little bit last week. He got nerfed the other day, but they just they made him cost 1 more and increased his health by 1, which I think actually makes him better in Draft, because he's slightly harder to get rid of. The Lee Sin has, the first time you cast a spell each turn, he gains Challenger, so you can choose what blocks him. And the second spell gives him Barrier, which prevents him taking damage. So he's really, really hard to deal with in combat, which is the main way you have of dealing with cards in this game, because the removal is bad. Despite the removal cards being inefficient, they are still worth picking in this format, I found. Exactly because they subvert this dynamic. Like, opponent plays a big scary champion or a huge regenerate creature, or they play something and then buff it up twice, and you're like, whatever, vengeance, it's dead. It's out of my hair. It will take your entire turn to do that, but that's fine. I mentioned regeneration. Like, I have 3 copies of this in my deck right now. This card is brilliant. It just has Overwhelm, which means that excess damage it deals to enemy units is dealt to the enemy face, and regeneration, so it heals at the end of each turn, which means that, like, unless there is something with 5 power on the enemy field, you can just attack and attack and attack and then block and then block. You know, everything has vigilance in this game, so the attrition that normally kind of, I guess, balances out creatures in their ability to take part in combat every single turn is completely gone with regeneration units, and they are incredibly strong as a result. Yeah, generally my plan is to try and find some kind of big-ish card that snowballs. Cards with Fury are quite good for this. They get +1/+1 when they kill things as well. So that gives them some amount of sustain, and you can use them to, like, you know, they kind of keep pace with larger creatures further up the mana curve, so they can still attack in the late game. And there are ways to, like, heal your cards and keep them going and stuff. I'm just going to play 1 game for the end of this video. I hope I win this. After all, we're talking about the game being straightforward. Yeah, I tend to find that, like, a lot of my wins do come from ensuring they don't have a champion or any other, you know, sort of powerful snowball creature, and then sticking my own and riding it to victory There are other ways to win, like aggro does seem to be viable. Because of the way the draft works, it gives you synergy cards. Oh crap, they have a Aurelion Soul. Alright, this game will probably come down to who draws this first. Because playing the second soul is really bad. We are attacking second. I can play this and attack with it, but I kind of would rather wait to play it after something else. I have this, which can enable the Nightfall quite well. Don't need that. I kind of want to keep Misogyny just because it's really good. I'm not going to be attacking on... Oh, I am going to be attacking on turn 6. Yeah, I'm going to keep this. This is still fine as like just a body on turn 2, so let's keep it. If I draw something else, this makes a 1 mana spell, which is really good for enabling Nightfall, which triggers if you played something else this turn. Oh, actually, I've got this now. So what I'm going to do is this on turn 2, this on turn 3, heal something with the 1 mana spell off of this, and then play that on turn 4. Should do the job. So it's a bit of a waste to not have the elusive, but because I have Misogyny, I want to curve out. Misogyny pays you off for damaging the enemy, and I want to make sure they're not like super far ahead on board, otherwise she won't have as much impact. That's a good card, I think. I say that. You are playing 2 cards to get 1 Celestial that doesn't cost very much, but the Celestials are very powerful, so... What do they discard? Behold the Infinite. That seems bad. Right, let's attack. They've got 2 mana up, so they could play a trick here. I don't really care. I'm happy trading a 2-drop for a trick. Sure. Let's ping for Misogyny there. My complaints about the UI of this game continue, by the way. Like I said, I've played like maybe 30 hours of this now, and I still can't tell what half of it does. Like, when champions level up, you get this little graphic that shows you that they did so, which is nice. Except it doesn't tell you what the champion is or what caused them to level up. You can't mouse over it and find out what the card does or anything. Oh, God. I mean, I have a 2-3, so I'm not too scared of this. And I have a removal spell for next turn, actually. Oh, that's a great draw, because I've got a spell mana, so next turn I can do Caught in the Cold plus this. Spell mana, I did talk about this a little bit last time. I do like the spell mana mechanic. I think it's working quite well. Is it so bad to leave that up? It is just a 2-2. Nightfall when you attack another Nightfall. Give me +2/+0 and Challenger this round. And she has quick attack. So if she levels up, that is going to be pretty devastating. You know, I have Misogyny for another removal in 2 turns, so I think this is worth doing. And this attack is huge as well. Okie dokie. This card is quite good. It's 5 mana for a heal 5, but that's kind of okay because of spell mana. Like, especially in limited, you do tend to end up with mana left over. Alright, this is going to be pretty brutal. So we attack with everything, that blocks that. They're tapped out. Opponent definitely should have saved their healing spell for after I hit them in the face. Although I guess they didn't know I had a 5-3 overwhelm. Cool, they chopped with the 1-1, so that's that gone as well. They're going to be able to play... So they play something here, we're going to Misogyny it, and then hopefully they don't play anything good before I get to attack. Moondreamer. Yeah, sure, I'll kill a Moondreamer. It's not ideal, because I'd rather get some more card advantage out of Misogyny's ability, whereas this generates a spell, but they do not have an attack in the slightest. One thing that people told me about when I started playing this that has definitely turned out to be true is the value of open attacking, which is attacking before playing anything. So here my opponent can play another creature to block. So if they play something big, like half my stuff can't attack, I'm hoping they've just got spells or bad cards in hand so I can just push everything at their face and maybe just kill them immediately, but damn it. I mean, that's fine. The Crescent Guardian can still kill this. Do I have lethal? No, that's 12. Yeah, we'll just do this. Get rid of that. I still get in for 9. I've got another copy of Sejuani in my deck, so the level up is still worth it. Hopefully we can kill them on the next attack, which will be in 2 turns. I can play this, and heal this. Damn. So that has Overwhelm and Spell Shield, which is fine because I don't like I have any removal. That taps them out. They're probably going to attack with it. I'll just take the 7 though. Right, if I play this, this is slow. So if I play this next turn to give this elusive, it doesn't really do anything because they can just block something big anyway. So I think I just want to put as much hitting power on the table as possible, and then next turn just open attack. Like they're tapped out, they've got the 1 blocker. I'm just going to make a million creatures, push everything at their face, and hope they don't have too much star shaping or whatever in response. So here's the value of the open attack, because they don't get a chance to play any creatures before combat. So we just flunge. They probably block this, and they take a million, but we'll see what they have. Okay, that's a good sign, because I don't think there's any instant speed heal. In fact, I don't think there's instant speed anything. Like the Celestials, I think, are mostly slow. Oh, correct. There's one that draws a champion and gives it +2/+2, but that's it. Got him. So why did I win that game? Well, my opponent played... They didn't play to the board very much. Oh yeah, this is the the KDA quest screen. You can get card slaves with their pictures on, which makes the cringe even worse, because now you're looking at, like... I played a game the other day where, my opponent had, like, a half-naked woman on the back of all their cards. And it's like, what is this? And so this is now what happens after the end. Ooh, that's good. So some expeditions, there's a you get a new champion afterwards and slightly more cards in your deck. Others, you get these swaps. You also get a swap if you lose. But this is quite clever. If you don't lose, or for any steps where you didn't lose, you get the swap at the end. So if you go 6-0, you get like 7 swaps before the final, to make sure that the deck's in the final where only one person, where it's where you can't absorb a loss, are as powerful and evenly matched as possible. So I think that's a good decision. I think this is a fairly easy. So this card I picked because, because it was alongside something else that was good. I think it is technically a Nightfall enabler, but it puts the messenger as a 2-mana 2/2 that draws a card. Can I right click these? Oh yeah, here we go. So for this to kind of pay for itself, you have to... This costs you a card, and these don't. And the second one of these... Oh, even then, it's still just cycles. Yeah, you're still down a card the whole time. But it's like, by the time you've played the second one of these, it's like 1 card for 2 2/2s for 5 mana, which is still bad, right? And then the third one, you've got 1 card for 3 2/2s, which is like okay. So I don't think this card is very good, except as a Nightfall enabler. Maybe it's better in constructed, I don't know. This is very small, but it invokes, and the Celestial cards are all very good. There's a 6 mana removal spell, Celestial, that's quite good. You can get there's like a 5/5 for 5 with Challenger, that's really good. A 3/4 that invokes again, it's really nice. So the terrible card for good cards, probably the swap I'm making. 2/3 Overwhelm is whatever, it's just a 2-drop. How many 2-drops do I have that actually affect the board? On turn 2, that doesn't really count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I don't really want to cut a 2-drop. Even for this card, which is quite good, but I think I've got one already? No, I don't. That was the last deck. This card's okay, but this card's good. This card is fine. So let's swap the bad card for the good card. Easily done. Oh, I unlocked something. Let's open a capsule. Can I tell what all of these do? Yes. This time. Only because I know what Overwhelm and Strikes mean. One thing that's very confusing actually with the Strikes. So I'm used to fight spells in Magic, which makes two creatures hit each other. Welling Death your thing just attacks their thing. That's it. It doesn't. They don't hit each other. I think there is a card that does that, but it's like a specific. It says so on the card. It's written out. So it's not necessarily intuitive if you're coming from Magic. Yeah, so that's that. To summarize, bad news, Cheesecake Art has gotten worse, even worse. And it genuinely is like, if it wasn't for that, I think I'd be enjoying this game quite a lot. But it's so hard for me to just sit there and smile and play it. Even though I've just been like super in the mood for playing card games recently. And I have somewhat had my fill of Hearthstone Arena, at least until the next expansion. Because it tends to revolve around a specific set of like neutral cards that tend to determine whether a deck is good. My last draft I got 10 wins, and at some point during the draft I realized that my deck had 5 class cards in it, and I was like, oh. And the deck was bonkers. Like 2 of the losses were Priest, which is by far and away the best class in Arena. So it's like kind of an auto lose almost. And I forget what the other one was. Yeah, so I've been enjoying exploring something novel. But it's just hard for me to be like, yeah, play this game, it's great. Because, you know, it's fine, it's a fun game. I'm enjoying it. Slowly getting used to the extremely in-your-face animations, which is one of the big benefits of playing on mobile, because they're much smaller. But it does have a good mobile client. It's a bit slow, but like, actually, playing on a mobile is kind of annoying because if you leave it alone for a moment, the screen turns off, and you can't leave this game alone because there isn't a point where like your opponent's just having their turn. You have to always be paying attention to it, which means that if the screen turns off, the timer can be ticking away in the background. So you have to keep like prodding the screen. Also, if the screen turns off while it's loading, it will stop loading, or if you alt tab to another program, which is a bit of an oversight, I feel. I say that. Maybe, I mean, I'm only saying that because Riot is a very big company and they presumably have the development resources to do what Hearthstone does, which is to be able to update in the background. But yeah, it is nice that it has a mobile client. Launching with mobile is like a bit of a power move in the CCG world. And that certainly has helped me engage with the game. But yeah, it's really hard to recommend it. And in fact, if anything, I would recommend not supporting it. Just purely, you know, until the Riot gets their shit together, essentially. Sorry for swearing. If you're listening with children or parents. I feel like this warrants breaking the rule, because I'm just really ticked off with game companies doing this every time, and like, this game is so much more loud and more explicit about it than most of them. Like, yes, if you look closely at the art in Hearthstone, it's not too far off either, but like, it's so much less in your face about it. And not every character in Hearthstone is as blandly identical as the ones in Runeterra are. Or not every female character, I should say. Like, Hearthstone still has swamp witches and privateers that, you know, look like pirates, and knights and champions and things. Like, Runeterra technically has all of those, but they look completely identical, so I can't really... Well, I don't know if it has swamp witches, but... probably wouldn't dare put some actual slime on the pristine pale flesh of one of the League of Legends girls. So yeah, still frustrated about that. And like I said, the patch came on, and I was playing on my phone, and the game loaded, and I looked at the menu screen and immediately turned it off. I had to like come back and like steel myself a little bit, just because like, I know it sounds dramatic, it sounds like I'm overreacting, but honestly, I'm really sick of this stuff. And I'm a dude. Like, I I am a straight male who is white. I am like I am marrying a slim, athletic white woman, and it's still like this is bad, right? These people don't represent my partner, and she is, you know, slim, athletic, and Caucasian. Like it's, I mean, they aren't athletic, which is part of it. They don't have any bloody muscles. That detail annoys me maybe more than it should, but it just sort of shows how little actual thought has been put into what these characters do and how they think about themselves, which is so key for making believable and fun and engaging personalities in your games, in my opinion. I'm not a game writer, but I play a lot of games and I've done some writing, and yeah, you know, I much prefer the ones where the characters actually have some agency over their own appearance. Obviously not, you know what I mean, right? Like, the characters are presented in such a way that, like, they decided to wear these things. They decided to present themselves in the way that they do. Right, this video is close to an hour, so I'm going to wrap up here. There will be a part 3, because I mentioned the part 2 is going to be once I'd actually played some ladder with a net deck, and I haven't done that yet still. But once I run out of expedition tokens, I'll probably pool whatever resources I have, see what I can craft, and have a go. So yeah, hopefully I'll be able to report back in a few more weeks. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. Please remember that women are different, and that's valid. And people of color exist, and that's also valid. Be nice to the non-white or non-male players of games, you know, who are trying to make inroads into these historically alien or hostile communities, and push back against anyone explicitly trying to gatekeep those folks from making their way in. And play Magic, I guess. It's like this, but better. If you don't flood. Bye, everyone. See you for part 3.